With this DC plug running from my camper, the only thing I have to do is plug it into the portable power station and everything changes. We now have a very high capacity, super high performance system running the camper instead of the battery. Hey, Brian here with DIY Outdoor Life. In this episode, I'm going to show you one of the coolest things that you're able to do with portable power stations in your camper. We are going to be plugging our camper directly into the regulated 12-volt port that comes on the Goal Zero Yeti. This is going to give us 141 amp hours of usable capacity, 6 times the amount that came stock on this camper. The best part of all is I also have the 2000 watt pure sine wave inverter and an MPPT charge controller that can handle up to 600 watts. You can wire your panels in parallel or series up to 50 volts and plug it directly into this unit. It's got Bluetooth controls that I can control from my phone inside the camper. If I were to try to add these features to this camper permanently, I would spend a lot more money than what this unit costs. The best part for me is that this unit moves with me. For the hundreds of days a year I'm not in my camper, I still have this portable power to back up my home when the power goes out or to use tools in the backyard. The value is great, so let's check this out. So to understand what we're doing here, we're basically making a plug that can interrupt the circuit on your camper battery. You're going to have a positive side and a negative side. The positive wire, the red wire, is going to run to the converter in your camper, and then it gets dispersed to all the appliances. All of the appliances and the converter have a wire down to your frame. The black side, the negative side of your battery, also attaches to the frame. It uses the chassis as a giant wire. That's how these systems work on the negative side. What I want to do is create a simple plug that easily disconnects the battery. This is going to give me the access to plug the Goal Zero in instead of the battery. Now, that circuit or loop is going to take place the exact same way, except instead of the battery that came with our camper, we're going to be using a high-performance portable power station. Now, to do this job was really easy. I just disconnected the negative wire and ran it out the same side as the positive wire. Since I have a disconnect switch here, a kill switch, I just grabbed both of the wires that were coming from the camper. This red wire goes to the switch and eventually the positive terminal, and this negative wire goes right to the battery itself. I'm going to cut both of these wires, obviously with the kill switch turned off and the camper unplugged, and I'm going to install this Anderson power pole. This is now my disconnect. When I go like this, the camper is disconnected from the battery. When I plug it back in, the camper's going to function as if there was no plug there at all. To create these Anderson power pole plugs is really simple, and there's like a million videos with really high quality instruction, so I don't feel like I have to go into great detail here. I'm going to include a link in my description to this pack of 45 amp plugs. I don't want to use the smaller plugs for this job, so the 45 amp are more than appropriate to do this job. Now this kit is going to come with the rubber boot that'll slide over the plug when you're done, a bunch of these 45 amp crimps, and the red and black plugs that you'll be using to do this job. The only thing you have to do is strip the wire, crimp the metal piece on, and slide these plugs over. It's really, really simple. The trickiest part is making sure that you have your orientation right so that it keys. I promise you that's the spot that takes the most amount of time. Make sure you mock these up so that the final connection plugs in the way you want it to. But they're also reversible. These plugs can go north and south, east and west, and you can swap them around with the little grooves that are in the side of these. That's what makes these so handy. I use this Anderson power pole crimper because it makes the job easier, but I've done this a million times with a normal crimper. You usually just have to bend it a little bit with needle nose at the end to make sure the plug slides over. You don't need the specialized gear to do these. I now have a nice watertight seal that makes a secure connection. Now that I've created this plug, the only thing that I have to do is turn the battery off and disconnect it. I've now completely removed this battery in 1 second. This is the feature that's going to come in handy. I now use this Anderson power pole extension cord. You can make these the same way we did this with 10 gauge wire for about $4. If you want to just buy this kit, I'll put one in the description. I think it's like $25. Make sure you use high quality pure copper wire and good connection points. Now this is going to plug in to my camper and provide an extension. I'm now just going to run this over to the Goal Zero, plug it in, and I can turn the 12 volts on and I'm off to the races. I'm now running my camper on the Goal Zero in a matter of seconds. Hey folks, I have to jump in here with a post-edit addition to this video. I got some amazing questions on the last video and comments that I want to include in here. First of all, it seems like Goal Zero is the only company that is making this output right now. I used to have another brand that was doing it that I used. It seems like nobody's including this anymore. If you know something different, hit me up in the comments below because I'd like to check that out. But the Jackery plug is only an input for solar, and EcoFlow Delta and Blue Yeti do not have this output port on their portable power stations. The other thing that's important here is I wasn't thinking about generators. This is purely a boondocking battery trick. You are not doing this to charge your Yeti. So if you have access to shore power or you have a generator, I don't want you plugging your camper in while you're running on this output from the Goal Zero. If you want to do that, it's simple. Just unplug the Goal Zero and plug your camper battery back in. It only takes a second. But this style of connecting your camper does not work for charging the Yeti. You're going to charge the Yeti from solar while you're doing this. So that's an important distinction. Now, if you stay tuned to the end, if you have more questions, once again, I do a segment for battery nerds and battery enthusiasts because there's so many questions about life cycles. I get all of these emails about life cycles, and 99% of them do not understand what a life cycle is. This Goal Zero unit will last a very long time. It lasts just as long as a Blue Yeti, an EcoFlow Delta, or a Jackery. The difference in the battery chemistry does not translate to the life expectancy of the unit because the battery is not what breaks. So if you have questions about that, stay tuned to the end. Let's get back to the video now. So it's hard for me to overstate the amount of features I get when I plug in my camper this way. This unit has a built-in control screen with a shunt. It tells me the wattage that I'm using, the amount of time at the current usage until the battery is empty. Lots of cool features with amps and volts. It's got some intelligence here. I'm also able to read that from my phone. With Wi-Fi, I can read it and control it from anywhere in the world. When I'm out boondocking, the Bluetooth feature allows me to read it when I'm in range. So I can put this in the back of my truck and read it and control it from inside the camper. It's next level. But this unit costs $2 grand. So you can also do all of the same things with the Core 1000 for half the price. But I want you to realize you have half the charging capabilities, half of the abilities, or 3/4 of the abilities to use the DC port. It's 20 amps instead of 30 amps, and there's no Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. This is 140 amp hours, that one's 93 amp hours. So you do get what you pay for when you're looking for these systems, but I just wanted to highlight some of the amazing features that this thing can do. I'm gonna plug my solar directly into the MPPT, and this thing can run my camper indefinitely in a boondocking situation. So the last tips I'll share with you guys are the tips I use to keep this thing lasting a long time and out of the weather. The first one for me is so easy. Because I have a cap on my truck, I can actually run the wire out the side and close it and keep my unit waterproof. But if you don't have a cap on your truck, that doesn't mean you can't do this. I have seen a lot of people elevate the system and put an upside down Rubbermaid over the top of it, and that's a way to keep it out of the weather. I slide it under the camper to keep it out of the sun, and even if there's a light rain, that does a good job too. You can also shut this type of flat wire if you're careful into something like a lift gate of a Subaru. It just kind of sticks in the weather stripping. Just don't wail down on the thing and snap it. Now, I do it in the back lift gate of my Jeep Wrangler with no problems. But I've also had some friends that put the weather guards on their window and unroll their window in their car down a little bit to run the wire free. This is what keeps the Goal Zero out of the weather. You could pitch a tent and stick it in it if you felt like it. It doesn't have to be a major hassle. I've outfitted a cooler where I notch the side for the wire and just close the Goal Zero in the cooler. Keep the thing out of rain. You don't want it raining on top of your Goal Zero or Jackery or whatever system you want to use. The one other precautionary step is these units don't like to be baked. So if you're putting them in your car, make sure it's not 130 degrees in there. Part of the reason I love this Goal Zero is because it's made out of aluminum. It's a heat sink. It has really nice thermostatically controlled fans, but you do want to be careful. Don't put this thing in direct sunlight because it's not very good for it. So find a good ventilated area and keep this thing out of the weather, and it's going to last a real long time. So folks, I'm going to do one more segment for the battery enthusiasts and the battery nerds out there. I know you might have some questions about the particular chemistry that I'm using, and I want to answer those. But for everyone else who isn't interested in that sort of thing, check out the links in the description. I have a whole video on the X series and a whole video on the Core to show you why I like to use those units. So check it out. Make sure if you're shopping for a portable power station that it has that Anderson power pull output. They all don't have that, so you want to be careful. So if you're signing off now, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. For the battery nerds, hang out a minute and I want to address some really important stuff. Is it just us battery nerds? I want to go off on a little bit of a technical jargon here for a few minutes because so much of the information out there is not very good. It's misleading, and people think that there's no reason why you should buy a lithium NMC system like these and that you should go to LifePo systems. I'm here to tell you that they do different things, and it's important that you know the actual real-world difference between the two. Lithium NMC systems can weigh 33% less. A Jackery 2000 weighs 40 pounds. A Bluetti 2000 with LifePo weighs 60 pounds. The difference between 40 and 60 in a portable unit is a big deal for a lot of people. They have similar performance characteristics. The lithium NMC actually has better cold weather performance because it has better self-heating performance. So that's good for a system that you're using camping. The other thing that lithium NMC does is it holds its state of charge longer. LifePo has a faster self-discharge rate. So this is not a lopsided argument. Where LifePo mops the floor, and most of you know this, is in life expectancy. But nobody is talking about the most important part, the parentheses. The life cycles are 1C discharge rates at 25 degrees Celsius to 80% capacity. So when you reach that point, You go from a 1500 watt system to a 1200, but the system still works. You go from 1000 to a 800. It doesn't die, you lose capacity. So when you use these systems with a 1C discharge rate, you're talking about running 2 RV microwaves or 3 or 4 window air conditioners at the same time. It's an outrageous test. So when you use this normally, the ways that I explained using it today, you can expect to get thousands of cycles out of this battery before it dies. If somebody tells you that it's going to last 1.5 years, they're full of it. These units are warranted for 3 years, so you know that the company is going to back the fact that it's going to last longer. In my experience, the tests run out at about 10 to 15 years. That's the life expectancy to expect out of these. But when you put a LifePo battery in, you add 20 pounds and it doesn't last any longer. You know what kills these units? Battery management system, comm screen, inverter, MPPT. They're very hard to service. The companies don't want to sell you the products and parts to swap out on these. So what goes bad is not the battery. So all of this information about switching to LifePo, I own Blue Yetis, I love them. They can't do this job as well as Goal Zero, and the true life expectancy is the same. We're not buying a battery, we're buying a system, and the weak link is not the sag point of that battery. So if you've been indoctrinated in this 500 versus 2500 life cycle thing, it's not a really solid comparison because the battery is not what's going to send these to the recycling center. It's basically everything else, and these units all about last the same. They all have the same warranty. So don't be fooled by that. Thank you guys for watching. Hit me up with a comment below if you have an opinion or a question. Thanks a lot.